Hi, this is Dave Michaels. Welcome to Real Time Recorded Week 2, 2021. Still feels strange to say 2021. With me, as usual, is Zeus. How are you, Zeus?
Hey, Dave. Week 2. We're rolling along now, I guess.
Rolling along. A pretty, for week 1 was kind of slow. Week 2, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So let's start off with a recap. I'll start off with Dialpad announced a 100% SLA. Now, I actually really like this. They're not the first to do this. I think actually TalkDesk may have been the first to make this bold move. I think, and there's not a lot of companies that have the that lead with availability and reliability, and of course, like a company called Five9, you might think would be Five9s, but actually, cloud isn't as reliable as many people think. It's an interesting way to differentiate your product. Hopefully, we'll get to 100% or Five9 SLA, or not SLAs, but real availability in the next few years. But right now, we still have 3.9, 4.9 is pretty common. And I think what's really interesting when a company like Dialpad says 100% SLA is what they're really saying is it's our problem, not yours. Because if a vendor tells you to only expect 4.9s and they have an outage, it's like, yeah, we're working on it. But when they guarantee 100%, that means they pay penalties and they have every incentive in the world to kind of fix this up. I actually kind of wonder why more companies don't do this. And I'd actually like to see, because it is basically an insurance and math equation, I'd like to see companies offer availability or pricing at different SLAs. So it might be the exact same service, but maybe if you pay a premium and you'll get a bigger refunds if you pay for the 100% SLA. What are your thoughts, Yes?
Yeah, I don't know. I saw this. I thought it was interesting. It was certainly bold, right? And I think you're right. I think TalkDesk is the other one that does it, and I think the others don't because they're not 100% up. Right? And I don't think Dialpad is either. I think I talked to them about this, and I said it's great that you offer this, but what this really comes down to is can your uptime actually match your SLA? So anybody can offer 100%, right? But if if your cloud is problematic, and it comes down to what the penalties are for, that if it's really just for some cloud providers, they'll just rebate the cost of the service for the period it was down. So if it was down 5 minutes, that might come up to a few $100, but it might cost the company far more than that, right? So I think when the rubber hits the road, it's how does the company make good on the fact that they did violate the SLAs. One of the things that I did like about the Dialpad one, though, is it was proactive. If they do violate the SLA, they notify customer. When I was a buyer of these types of services, back in the day, especially with telecom services, I used to roll my eyes at SLAs because, frankly, they made it so difficult for the customer to actually prove that it was down. And there was all kinds of caveats, right? Service providers were, well, it's only transport on our network. We don't count last mile. And this one, there is some meat to this one, right? It's the service doesn't, so they make, if the cloud's down, they don't obviously take the network into account, but they do have some meat behind this one. So I'll give a thumbs up to Dialpad for actually putting some real muscle behind an SLA. And you're right, everybody should do this, right? If you can't guarantee your product's going to be available to the customer, then frankly, what good's the product, right? So it's good to see somebody do this, and I would like to see the rest of the industry adopt this. So also this week, Logitech actually, we haven't talked about Logitech yet, I think, since we started this series. They announced a number of new products this week for meetings. Their Rally Bar line, which range from some mini devices all the way up to some larger devices. I think pricing ranges from $1,000 to $4,000. But this is part of what we talked about, Dave, in the whole evolution of devices, right? These are some really good high quality devices too. They have beamforming, they have optical zoom, things like that. It works with Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Ring, and it's funny because whenever we hear about the collab space, everybody talks software, but hardware is still an important part of the overall collaboration experience. Some companies are good at building their own, like Cisco is. Other companies like Microsoft, not so much. So if you can leverage the strength of a company like Logitech that arguably builds hardware better than anybody, it's certainly as far as value goes, that's great for all the customers involved. And so I've been impressed with Logitech too, because they've really stepped up their game. They're no longer that kind of low end consumer $25 type of camera. They have some really good high quality devices now, and this is beneficial to the customers of the manufacturers that don't make hardware.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really excited about these announcements. I've been, I think it was the Celaborate was the first company I saw with an Android-based room system, and I knew when I saw that it was the future. Wasn't sure Celaborate was, but I knew that was the future. They got acquired by this was BPOS, I think, or I can't remember the name, the old Sennheiser.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Android makes so much more sense because the processors, the Qualcomm processors, are so much more. They're powerful and they're less expensive. They're more efficient, and so now we're seeing a lot of companies, Neat, Poly, even Cisco. They're all embracing these Android-based room systems. Everyone but Google, interestingly enough. Google's room systems are based on Chromium, and I find that just kind of crazy because Google makes Android, excuse me.
Yeah.
But the old model with companies like Logitech who make USB accessories were using either a PC like a laptop, or they were using a NUC often, an Intel NUC that basically was a little box computer. So one of the products that Logitech announced is what they call the Roommate, which is basically the new NUC, for lack of a better term. It's a Android-based compute, and it's going to start shipping around the summer. It's about $1,000 to get these things, and it's basically Android OS, their version of Android OS on a NUC. And you could use that because the Rally bars are made for mid-sized rooms and small rooms, and so you would, for a larger room, you would use the Rally accessories like the camera and the microphones with the Roommate. Now, I'm curious whether other vendors will use the Roommate, because it basically is a NUC, and so lots of companies have been making products for NUCs. And now that Logitech's introducing the Roommate, I wonder if they can somehow use that for their own USB devices. I'm also really curious. You mentioned Microsoft Zoom, RingCentral, GoTo. The one that's missing there is Cisco. Now, Cisco and Logi have had a good relationship with like the Meetup and their USB accessories, but I'm wondering if Cisco, I'd like to get your opinion on this, if Cisco is going to embrace the appliances from Logi. I mean, it's direct competitive to what they're doing with their own room systems. But on the other hand, Cisco really wants to sell WebEx enterprise-wide, and if Logi has an interesting device, maybe they'll embrace it. What do you think?
I'm guessing no, just for the point that you brought up that they want to sell their own. I think they feel that if they want to really deliver the full WebEx experience, it's got to be over their own devices. I don't believe that Logitech is such a big brand too that you're going to make you're going to base your UC purchase off the device that you have, right? It's going to come down to, I'm going to choose Cisco and I'll buy their whatever devices they recommend. I'm going to buy Teams, and if there's Logi ones available, I might have a choice, but ultimately, I don't think the endpoint will dictate the platform. And so I don't think there's a ton of risk Cisco to not. I suppose if they got enough customers asking for it, they might. But if you look even on the headset side, they make their own, and they've kind of minimized the sale of other people's headsets and things like that. So that it would be, I would think it would be inconsistent, I think, for Cisco to go down the path of supporting another room hardware like that.
So for our third segment, we're going to try something new. We're going to do what we're calling a rapid fire segment. There's so much news, we can't cover it all. So we're just going to do some shout outs, basically. So make sure you caught these headlines. I'll start off with Five9 actually announced a new CMO. I got a chance to meet her, Jennifer Murphy. She's from Micro Focus and Hewlett Packard. My sense is that she's someone who speaks softly, but probably carries a pretty big stick. Interesting setup at Five9 because Rowan is he definitely gets the power of marketing. He definitely understands this, but so it's going to be how much is he going to let her do? I'm anxious to see. The last CMO at Five9 was not that visible, to be honest, and Five9 was pretty quiet in 2020. So I'm really anxious to see. I actually talked to Jennifer about this, and it sounds like she's ready to go, and she's pretty excited about what they can do at Five9.
So continuing on executive hires, Ring Central actually announced two C-level hires. They hired a CISO named Heather Hinton, and she has a long pedigree in security, including a stint at IBM. I think this is not all cloud companies have a CISO like cloud, and I think they should. I think if 2020 proved anything, it was the importance that security has in the role of communications, right? Bad security leads to bad things for your customers. And so I think this is a critical hire for Ring Central, and they're one of the few to actually have their own CISO. So I think that's a good move for them. Also at Ring Central, they hired a person named Jaya Kumar to be their new CMO, following, I guess, in the CMO trend that you talked about with Five9. And the CMO at Ring plays a critical role because there is no cloud communication vendor that probably has done a better job of branding themselves. But they're trying to go through a bit of a shift now, right? They're trying to market less to IT directly and more to users. We talked about, can they make GLP a verb? And that requires somebody who's got some experience marketing directly to the end user. And so Kumar's coming in, and this person, he's got experience at Pepsi and Kraft and some consumer brands and things like that. So I think it's kind of an interesting crossover between the corporate stuff that Ring sells and where they're trying to go selling more directly to users.
Also this week, we saw ATOS Unify announce the general availability of Unify Office by Ring Central in the United States. Now, UCaaS, of course, is their the Ring Central offering with the MVP, meetings, video, and phone. And I think this is really important for a couple of reasons. First, it's Unify's migration path to the cloud. So if you are a Unify customer, this is the primary migration path. They've already launched this in Europe. I think the US makes the 9th country. And so they've already got some scripts. They've already got some migration plans. They've already got support of the Unify endpoints. So that's all fairly logical. But also, I think what's really important is that this is the first of the Ring Central partners. We've seen and talked about several of these partnerships that Ring Central has. That is that ATOS is actually a global solution provider or integrator, GSI, and so that means that Ring Central now has a fairly strong partner that really understands the Microsoft ecosystem, really understands the Salesforce ecosystem, really understands Google, really understands work processes, and I think this is going to be an interesting new element for Ring Central and help customers with some more kinds of transformation. And then also earlier this week, unrelated to this, is ATOS actually tried or started an acquisition started acquisition talks with a company called DXC, which is a fairly large integrator, global integrator, but also fairly significant here in the U.S. It would actually triple ATOS's presence in the U.S. to a $10 billion business. And so a lot of stuff going on there with that launch. I think the next country that Unify Office is going to is UK. And even though it's just in these 9-10 countries, it's the Ring Central offer is basically supported in 40 countries and like 10 different languages. So pretty interesting expansion and development.
Another kind of interesting news item was the expansion of the partnering capabilities that AWS has for their contact center intelligence AI-powered services. AWS is taking a bit of a different approach to contact center. While they have Connect and they do talk about the success of that, like AWS does across the board, they want to almost become more of a platform provider and have things that you integrate into other products. So if you think even what they're doing with Chime, with their integration into Zendesk and Slack and things like that, they're taking a similar approach here. And so CCI is a set of capabilities like speech, translation, intelligent search, conversational AI, and they added a whole bunch of new partners. Servion's one of them, Avaya, 8x8, Vonage, companies like that. One of the more interesting ones, and who did their own press release around this, was TalkDesk. And TalkDesk last year spent a lot of time talking about their own AI capabilities. And with this, they've actually used this to complement what they're doing with their own. And so now customers can pick the TalkDesk IQ services, or if they want to automate some capabilities, they can do it with the Amazon one. And so TalkDesk's goal they said in the pre-brief was within 3 years to automate 80% of interactions, and that's a pretty lofty goal. And I think to do that, it's good that the company recognized this. I think one of the criticisms that people have had of Thiago over the years is he wants to do everything himself, but partnerships lets you scale more, and certainly AWS does, arguably AI better than anybody. And so between the homegrown products they have, like Guardian, and the AWS ones, that 80% number looks pretty lofty in 3 years. I think they can hit that. So that was it's a good announcement for AWS, and it's good for TalkDesk to be a company that's actually jumped on this bandwagon early and is using the services.
So another thing that happened this week is the CES show in Las Vegas. I don't know if it's fair to say it was in Las Vegas since there wasn't really a show this year. We actually expected this would be a major topic for this week's real-time recorded. But the virtual event, just a lot of air out of those tires. It's just much less coverage, much less interesting. Bottom line, a few things that popped up. Obviously we saw new smartphones from Samsung and I think some others. Not too exciting. I think the excitement around smartphones is no longer in the smartphone. It's actually the stuff around the smartphone, and so we saw lots of that. Samsung had the smart tags, and so now you can find things. I think the BMW locks is really interesting. You can use your smartphone to unlock the car, and you don't have to take it out of your pocket and stuff like that. So we're really moving away from having anything else in your pocket. We're moving away from wallets, keys, etc. A lot of healthcare accessories for your smartphone, and lots of healthcare stuff in general. Lots of stupid stuff. I saw the wine, the robot that can pour wine. I really need that one. And but on the enterprise side, we saw lots of new devices. Some of them were pretty interesting. Lighter, faster notebooks. The Asus Chromebook caught my attention because it's an i7 processor, Intel processor, which is pretty high end for a Chromebook. But it also had built-in Titan C security keys, had built-in Wi-Fi 6, so we're starting to see Wi-Fi 6 proliferate. It had the pin, it was a convertible style. So that had a lot of interesting stuff in it. I saw some LTE notebooks coming out. I think we'll see more of those. One thing about the notebooks that's still really bothering me is even the high-end notebooks and Chromebooks are still coming out with 720 cameras. I really want to see these turn to 1080 cameras. I would think that after 2020 and the year of video, they would have got the memo about that. But video is really important, and I'd like to see better cameras. But so that's my thoughts on CES.
Yeah, thanks, David. I was wondering how a virtual event would actually work for a consumer show where you actually have to touch and see the things. But I think what we're saying is it doesn't. So. But now, I thought one of the most significant things that came out this week, Dave, was that Zoom announced 1 million phone subscribers. And it was just at Zoomtopia last year, which was, what was that, like October, November or something? September maybe, where they announced 500,000.
Yep.
So they've been selling Zoom Phone for less than 2 years. It took them, looks like about 18 months to get to 500,000 and 6 months to get to the 6 more months to get to the 1 million mark. So you can see there's an acceleration of that. Whenever I've talked to Eric Yuan, their CEO, about Zoom and what they're thinking about, he always pivots back to Zoom Phone and talks about how important that is. Actually, I pressed him once and I said, why don't you guys have your own contact center, right? And he would divert it back to how important Zoom Phone is. And so I think Zoom has sent a message. They're here to stay, right? It took RingCentral 5 years to get to Zoom Phone. Everything I'm hearing coming out of the company is Zoom Phone is like the top initiative at that company right now, creating an attach rate to that. And this sets up a really interesting battle between Zoom and a lot of its partners, like it had with RingCentral, and really the entire UCaaS field out there. So I think they are as legitimate a phone provider as there is today. They got this big base of meetings, which has a lot of loyalty, and I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in phone. So that wraps up week 2 of Real-Time Recorder for 2021. It was a busy week. Hopefully we'll have more weeks like that. On behalf of Dave Michaels, I'm Zeus Caraval. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, though, make sure you click subscribe.